Vladimir Putin did not travel to Istanbul to meet with President Volodymyr Zelensky for the peace talks. The British Mirror reports one reason. They claim that Putin has an obsession that prevents him from leaving not only Russia but even the Kremlin. Russian dictator has tightened his security and rarely leaves his Kremlin security bubble out of fear of a Ukrainian kill squad, anti-Kremlin plotters or killers from within his inner circle. Recall, Vladimir Putin even has led Russia's Victory Day commemorations with a parade in Red Square and heightened security. Heavy security and restrictions were in place in the center of Moscow. The security of Russian President Vladimir Putin is always being bolstered regardless of assassination attempts on other leaders, and everything necessary is being done to ensure it. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told earlier. Former commander of the UK's Joint Chemical, Biological, Radiological and Nuclear Regiment, Colonel Hamish de Breton-Gordon, told that Putin is now a dead man walking, a spent force whose war in Ukraine will cause his end. Things are looking very bad in Russia, as even the US now seems to be looking at conciliation with Ukraine, as Trump is realizing he has been played by Putin. He said to the Mirror, Putin cannot keep playing for time, and his bluff has been called brilliantly by Zelensky's challenge to meet him face-to-face in Turkey. Russia in the coming months will lose a third of its income through decreased oil prices, and it has lost probably 1 million troops to the conflict. He is incredibly paranoid, as we see with his increased security, and I am very reliably informed by people who would know that he has at least 2 doppelgangers or lookalikes. He has been acting like a worried Tsar, and the Bolsheviks are gathering at the gates because internally things are looking really terrible. Russians cannot even buy a loaf of bread, said Breton-Gordon. Things never end democratically in Russia, and the situation is bad for Putin. He has had people killed for years, and some in his military have already been dealt with in such a way. He knows the way this goes for a leader in Moscow who is not making good decisions, so he is probably right to be paranoid. Bruce Jones, one of the UK's leading analysts in Russian intelligence and the military, said. Colonel Richard Kemp, former commander of UK forces in Afghanistan, added, there are plenty of people who would want to have Putin bumped off, but his security is so tight that there is a real question over whether that is at all achievable, and I believe that for the moment it is unlikely to happen.
The Council of the International Civil Aviation Organization on Tuesday found Russia responsible for shooting down Malaysia Airlines Flight 17 over Ukraine with the loss of 298 lives more than a decade ago, in a ruling that raises the prospect of victims' families being paid compensation. According to Associated Press, a Dutch-led international investigation concluded in 2016 that the Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur airliner was shot down on July 17, 2014, from Ukrainian territory held by separatist rebels using a Bucha missile system delivered from Russia. Moscow denies any involvement in the MH17 tragedy. The Netherlands and Australian governments brought the case against Moscow before the Montreal-based Global Aviation Agency in 2022, and on Tuesday welcomed the verdict. The International Court of Justice wasn't an option, because Russia doesn't recognize The Hague, Netherlands-based court's jurisdiction. Thomas Shansman, a representative of the MH17 Next of Kin Association, whose 18-year-old son Quinn died in the tragedy, reacted to the verdict saying it will help to force Russia to acknowledge their responsibility and their involvement, because that is what we are still waiting for. The Council found that Russia had violated the Convention on International Civil Aviation, known as the Chicago Convention, which requires that states refrain from resorting to the use of weapons against civil aircraft in flight. It's the first time that the Council, which represents 193 member states, has decided a dispute between governments. Dutch Foreign Minister Casper Veldkamp said that the Council would consider the question of reparations within weeks. The Russian embassy in Australia didn't immediately respond to a request for comment on Tuesday.
of the crash.
For me, and for lots of other families, other next of kin, they are waiting for Russia to acknowledge and to say sorry. That's what they're looking for, not about the money. Although that will be part of negotiations as well. But for most of the families, they say, you know, money cannot buy anything back. My son, my father, my daughter, my grandchildren, they aren't here.
Right of the crash.
And so they have now to acknowledge, and they have to start negotiating with Australia and the Netherlands about this. So for us, we knew already, obviously, that Russia is responsible for this, but it will help, according to myself and the people that I represent, it will help to force Russia to acknowledge their responsibility and their involvement, because that is what we are still waiting for. Until today, they deny everything. This is no longer possible with this decision from ICAO.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has traveled to Albania to take part in the European Political Community Summit. According to Associated Press, he arrived late on Thursday from Ankara after discussions with Turkey's president, whose country is hosting Ukraine-Russia peace talks. The Ukraine leader had hoped to meet face-to-face with President Vladimir Putin, but Russia only sent a lower-level delegation. Friday's one-day summit in Tirana brings together the leaders of 47 European countries and organizations. They will discuss security and defense challenges across the continent, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine at the top of the agenda. The theme of the European Political Community, or EPC, summit is New Europe in a New World: Unity, Cooperation, Joint Action. The gathering will also address ways to improve the continent's competitiveness and tackle unauthorized migration.